Lovely. Welcome, everyone. I'm very excited to have you here today with me. My name is Emma Southern. I'm the president of the Residence Hall Association at American University, and I'm welcoming you to RHA's Understanding Isolation Housing panel. Today, I am joined by three guests for this virtual discussion that will hopefully connect students to administrators and inform them about some of the university's residential COVID protocols. I'd first like to introduce Lisa Freeman, the Director of Residence Life.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lisa Freeman. I'm the Director of Residence Life. I'm happy to be a part of this session, and thank you for coordinating this, Emma and RHA.
Of course. Next, we have Paul Calhoun, the Director of COVID-19 Student Support Services.
Hello, everyone. I am happy to have this opportunity. My team supports operations that occur in our testing clinic, as well as the isolation housing facility.
And finally, we have Leanne Wright, the Associate Director of Risk Management and Environmental Health and Safety Services.
Hi, Leanne Wright. I also, second hat that I wear at the university is the lead of the contact tracing team, or at AU, we call it the Affiliate Notification Program, to send out all notifications within the AU community only for anyone who has tested positive or has been identified as a close contact.
Lovely. Again, thank you all very much for joining me today to discuss isolation housing and positive COVID tests. Before we begin our questions, I would like to share that a lot of the information that we will be covering is also on AU's website, and we will provide the link to that in our comments or however you are viewing this video. And so we will go through our series of questions that we came up with in a chronological fashion, beginning with what students should do when they first test positive for COVID-19. Okay.
I'll begin. The very first step that a student should seek to follow upon receiving a positive test notification is ensure that they understand the source of that notification. Many students complete tests at our AU COVID testing clinic. However, many other students test at off-campus locations. Students who test on campus at our testing clinic should rest assured that their results are received by our campus administration and that follow-up steps will occur as soon as possible, most often within 1 hour or less, especially during business hours. Students who test off campus and receive results have an additional first step to follow. Those students must complete our self-report form to ensure that the university is aware of the positive result. Upon submitting the self-report form, those students can expect the same amount of response as persons who test on campus. Any student who lives on campus is considered residential. Residential positive students receive notification from our COVID notification team, as well as our isolation housing team. Those are persons who live on campus. They should expect that they will be notified of next steps to include packing, relocating, and completing their isolation experience at our isolation housing facility. Students who live off campus or non-residential students are given specific instructions about ways and steps to follow to ensure their safety as well as the safety of others around them while they complete their own isolation experience.
And I do also want to add that they should see it as two major things that you do when you test positive. One, make sure you submit the self-report form through the AU Forward portal, so the My AU portal. And that's whether you tested on or off campus. You still need to submit that self-report form because it has other fields in there, such as identifying your close contacts, and just gives us ways to gather a little bit more information about your positive test result. So no matter what, we're asking everyone to do step one, which is still complete that self-report form. Then once you've submitted that, you should receive in your AU inbox, your AU email account, further instruction. And that should be pretty automatic within, I would say, a matter of minutes, because we have an automated system that emails every case that we know of that comes into our system with step-by-step, what are your next things that we're like asking you to do, one of which is begin isolation immediately. So in the residence halls, what does that look like for you? You're staying in your room, wearing a mask as long as you're in your room. If you need to use the hall restroom, you can go ahead and do that while you're waiting for transport. And then again, be on the lookout for another AU email from Paul's team with those next steps. Sometimes they can't call right away. So I think they send that initial email to the student while you wait for further instruction via phone. So the two things, the AU forward self-report, fill that out, and then have your phone on do not have it on do not disturb, have it available, have your phone ready and waiting for the call, and also be checking your AU inbox.
Wonderful, thank you. Our next question, can and should a student go to their RA? Does your RA learn of the test results, and does the rest of your floor find out?
So I think it's important to draw a distinction between the role of the RA and testing positive tests. I'm always going to say an RA should be considered a resource for students, but we do not expect the RA to be the person that facilitates any formal communication about the process that the university has in place to support and respond to students that test positive. So it's kind of yes and no. I mean, I don't think that we don't have in place an expectation that you are going to your RA to divulge that you've tested positive. But if you have a concern or you need just to clarify a process, there's nothing wrong with reaching out to the RA. The RAs have been given here even recently, even more information about what happens when a student tests positive, because we know the reality is that students do consult and confer with RAs, but we do not want residents to consider RAs to be part of the formalized process for managing a positive student. We would never communicate information about a student's positive result to RAs or to floors. We don't even communicate that to the professional staff because student has a right to privacy. Now, having said that, we do expect that, being in a community of care, that if you test positive, you do everything you can do to ensure the overall safety of the community, which would mean if you were test positive, you probably shouldn't be going in a lounge and sitting down and hanging out with people. You should use your best judgment as to minimizing the potential exposure of other people within the community.
Lovely, thank you. Our next question was actually already answered basically in as a response to our first question, but I'll just reiterate it right now. If a student receives a positive test from a non-university complete COVID test, where should they report this?
So you should report any positive test that you receive either on or off campus, and especially important if it's off campus, through the My AU portal, the self-report form. There's a big banner at the top when you log into the My AU portal. I think it's the very first link you see, hyperlink at the top, and go ahead and complete that. And it will have a series of questions about where you took the test, what kind of test you took, symptom onset, and then an opportunity for you to identify any close contacts for the university.
Thank you. And continuing on that topic of close contacts, after a student tests positive, they input who their close contacts are within that portal, and then does the portal contact those people for the student?
Yes, so we ask that you put the first and last name of any AU person that you had close contact with, and there's instruction within the form of how to calculate that for yourself. So it's with the CDC guideline within the 6 feet for 15 minutes within 48 hours of your positive test or symptom onset. So that's all right there and explained right in the field for you. So you would provide their first and last name and then the date that you saw them within that, like in that window. Then it's not automated. So we actually have members of the contact tracing team looks at that information that is sent to us. And we identify whether, how like that whether these people are actual AU community members, to make sure that the close contact is an actual AU person, not an off-campus, roommate who has no affiliation with the university. So we kind of screen the information. Once all of that looks good to us, we will manually send an email for a close contact email, which is basically information on the date that they were exposed, and then information on when they should get their test. So they should get their test 5 to 7 days after their exposure date. What to do if they start having symptoms at any time in the next couple of weeks, and then what to do if they end up testing positive. So that all is coming through to their AU inbox as well. So again, if I can keep harping on like checking your AU email specifically for these notifications. This semester, I'm guessing Emma and others have hopefully noticed by now, and we did announce at the beginning of the semester that phone calls are extremely limited now. Sometimes the team will call if we have follow-up questions after reviewing the information that you submitted to us, or that the positive person submitted to us, but we are not like de facto universally calling every case and every contact. So really your lifeline of communication for COVID related matters is going to be your AU email address.
Thank you. I do believe that's very important. Good reminder for all members of the community to check your email. I know that it can be easy to let the emails pile up in that inbox, but always good to check. Okay, we are now entering our second section of questions, which is all about physically moving to isolation housing. So the first question is, when will a student be transported to isolation housing?
In almost all cases, students should expect to be transported from an on-campus housing location to the isolation housing facility within 3 hours every day of the week. The exception will be in cases where positive test results are received late night, evening, or very early morning hours. Our operations for transportation generally are within 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. every day of the week.
Okay, next, what should a student bring to isolation housing?
That's a great question, Emma. We encourage students to bring all the things that help them feel comfortable, things that help them relax, and things that they can use to be successful while they complete their restful isolation experience. Specifically, comfortable clothing to remain inside the facility for at least 10 days, any electronic items that bring them pleasure and joy, such as a computer, tablet, cell phone, and of course, charging cables or adapters for those items. Any school items that are used, textbooks, tablets, pens, pencils, paper, but more importantly, anything you like to eat and munch on. Favorite drinks, drink mixes, your water bottle, any preferred plates or bowls. The great thing about isolation housing is that we provide 3 meals a day for each student, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So for the most part, that's more than students tend to gain on campus. However, we can't always account for specialty items or preferred dietary items, but we try our hardest to do so. Some people have preferred pillows, blankets, teddy bears. We welcome to bring those things as well.
Lovely. So how do students get food, mail, homework, etc. when they're in isolation housing?
Wonderful question. Our isolation housing team ensures that all items are delivered to student rooms. Meals are provided through a room service process within the facility. Students order on their own using meal vouchers. Meals are delivered to the room, to the door specifically. In the case of mail, we ask that students limit mail packaging to the really essential items they need while they are in isolation. We work closely with the mail services staff to ensure that the items are held or maintained until students return to their housing locations on campus. Homework, schoolwork, testing materials are navigated between the Dean of Students office and the individual professors. By and large, students find that professors offer a ton of flexibility and lots of opportunity to complete assignments, either throughout the isolation experience or after they're done.
Thank you. I believe you already mentioned this, but I'll ask it again. How long will a student be in isolation?
It's a very important question. The AU isolation protocol requires 10 days of isolation. On day 5, the university administers a rapid antigen test, and a student who receives a negative rapid antigen test on day 5, along with having no fever on day 6, can clear and exit isolation housing on day 6. Students who receive a positive
A student who receives a positive on day 5 will have to continue isolating for a full 10 days and will be released on day 11.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leanne. That's exactly what I thought I was saying there.
The one clarifying point that I also just want to remind everyone a little that we do things slightly different here on the AU side. The 5 and 10 day calculations is from date of positive test and not from, say you had symptoms 3 days before you ended up taking a test. We still we start the count at the day of the positive test, not the 3 days prior of the symptom onset. So a little bit more conservative in that avenue, in that regard. So just to set up expectations appropriately.
Thank you. The final question in this section, who is at the isolation location to assist students if they need help?
We have a professional staff presence in the facility all day, every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, including myself and our COVID student support associate. We maintain in-person, face-to-face contact with every student. We email every student using the official AU email account. We even have text messages and phone calls that go through all hours of the day and night. So please be aware we are available, we are accessible, and we are responsive. Thank you again, Lisa.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that. And our final section that we'll move on to is they're miscellaneous, but they're still very important to understanding general safety protocols. And so the first question is, if a student learns that they had a friend test positive and they were with them prior to their results, what should they do?
So hopefully the positive friend will go ahead and report you, the exposed friend, in that self-report form. And then you'll get notification from the university with those next steps that we talked about via your AU email inbox. If your friend is not like an AU student or an AU associated, but you still know that you had an exposure, you should take a test 5 to 7 days after your known exposure date and monitor your symptoms. So if you come down with symptoms on day 3, you would isolate and get a test then. You wouldn't wait for 5 to 7 days. But if you have no symptoms, you just within that window around day 5, go ahead and go on campus and get a PCR test to get the most accurate result for if you're asymptomatic. And then if you test negative, you're obviously good to go. You just continue monitoring symptoms. If you test positive, you submit the self-report form like we discussed. And if you develop symptoms at any time, you would self-isolate and take another test. I also want to add that if you're fully vaccinated and up to date on all of your vaccine and your booster, do not have symptoms, you should continue going to class, obviously wearing a mask and abiding by all of the masking requirements that we have on campus. But you're still going to class even if you're a close contact, still cleared to continue with any AU activities. It's just that you're getting that additional test and being very vigilant about any type of symptom onset.
Thank you for that addition, very important. Next question, who will be completing close contact tracing and what is shared with the individuals contacted?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, we're moving things toward a more proactive expectation from the individual who tests positive. So we have that expectation that you will go in and submit that self-report form and identify who your AU close contacts are. then we will be able to send them a, with the identifying information removed, we will send them a notification about their exposure date and what their next steps are. So it's really, again, the initial identifying, I mean, in reality, it's always come from the case, right? So the individual who tests positive, we call them, used to call them and do the contact tracing. They report who their close contacts are. We're still asking them to do that. It's just in a different modality, right? So just through the AU portal now instead of via the phone.
Lovely. And our last question, is there anything students need to do upon their return to the hall or floor after being in isolation?
So not on my end. I think if you test, end up getting a negative antigen on day 5 and are getting out of isolation housing a few days, 5 days earlier than previously expected, we do require and ask that you fill out another self-report form declaring your negative test. So there will be an option on that form that says you had you're reporting a negative test and the date of your negative test. That way we just have in our system that we know to start we will expect to start seeing you back on campus, back on class, back to your activities on day 6 instead of on day 11. And I don't know if Lisa or Paul want to add anything as well in terms of what the expectations back in the dorm are.
I mean, we continue to be a community of care. Obviously, anyone that's faced this, there's a kind of like a reintroduction back into the community. And so we want to make sure that we are able to provide the support that the student needs. So this would be a great time to connect with your RA to figure out kind of what might be some needs that you have, and the RA could be a great resource. The community director can be a great resource in helping that student to feel more connected to the community, knowing that they have been away for a period of time.
I'm so happy Lisa mentioned the community of care approach. Often we see that RAs continue communication with students while they're in isolation housing, and that's what we hope to have happen. Likewise, we continue to remind everybody that we are still under our housing agreement, even though we may be in a different location. So our reminders about violence, alcohol, noise, drug use, cigarettes, visitors, traveling, moving around, unmasked, all those things are still in place with a bit of a heightened sense of careful and really a heightened sense of caution. Persons who begin the isolation process are persons who are contagious, who could infect others. And so we ask that everybody take it very seriously, continue to follow all the rules, all the protocols, continue to respond to every phone call and email, and most of all, remain patient and vigilant throughout this unique time in our lives.
One more thing that I would add, and it didn't come up here, but I think it's important to note that, you're an extension of your families, and so your families are going to want to know all the things that we just covered. So to Leanne's point and Paul's point, it's really important to read your email, to be communicative, to whatever is shared with you. It's up to you to share with your family. My team serves on call, and we still field a number of calls that come in from families asking about isolation housing and what to do. All of this information is available on our website, but it is important, and we just encourage you all to make sure that you're sharing this with your loved ones, because they are just as much concerned about you and your overall well-being while you're going through COVID and recovery that comes with it.
So happy you mentioned that, Lisa. Thank you. So happy.
Thank you all so much for joining me today and connecting with the residential body. If the viewers would like more information or to review some of the information that was covered today, again, please go to the AU website. You can search in the bar for isolation, quarantine, and contact tracing. There's a lovely, cute, frequently asked questions page that has a lot of this information. And if you're more of a visual person, that might be a good place to go to read through those answers. Again, thank you, Lisa, Paul, and Leanne for joining me today. And I hope that this has been a helpful session for everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. Take care.